Hi, everybody. In this video, we're going to continue talking about characteristics of the self-actualized individual, the individual who lives in an optimal psychological and existential condition, the individual that we all want to become, right? At least in theory, or in reality, I would say, right? Everybody wants to be happy. So we, in the previous video, we talked about the first characteristics, and these characteristics are listed in Maslow's book, Towards the Psychology of Being. These characteristics are the result of his studies, his research on people who are that person, the self-actualized person who lives a great, meaningful life. And the idea is that we not only identify those features, those characteristics, attitude, skills, whatever, but that we do so we work and we develop them, and that way we improve the quality of our lives. Okay, in the previous video we talked about the first characteristic, which is having a superior perception of reality. Okay, people who are self-actualized have see things in way more detail. They have a high resolution way of looking at things, looking at people, looking at themselves. So their perception is incredible, and because it is, they are, according to Maslow, nearer the truth. Okay, they're more likely to find the truth in everything, in a conversation, and in other things. So that's very important. The second characteristic that we're going to address today has a lot to do with the first one, and you'll see what I mean in a moment. So let's do it. Second characteristic of the self-actualized individual is increased acceptance of self, of others, and of nature. Okay, we have three things here. About the first one, about having an increased acceptance of oneself, Maslow say very little in this book, Towards the Psychology of Being. And I have found a few passages that have to do with self-acceptance. And I'm going to share one of those passages on the next video when we address characteristic number 3, because it has a lot to do with self-acceptance. So we'll deal with that on the next video. About the third item here, having an increased acceptance of nature, Maslow says even less. So I don't actually remember reading anything in this book about having an increased acceptance of nature. We can speculate, right? We can guess. It means probably having an increased appreciation, love for nature, but that's an speculation, and I don't want to speculate. So we're going to leave that on the side for now. And we're going to concentrate instead in this video on the second item of this triad, having an increased acceptance of others. Okay, so Maslow does say a lot about that. And so let's see what he says. According to Maslow, the moment that we say this man is a foreigner, an immigrant, a school teacher, a mechanic, a janitor, in that moment, we have classified him, performed an abstracting act, and to some extent, cut ourselves off from the possibility of seeing him as a unique and whole human being, different from any other one in the whole world. Okay, so this is something we do all the time. I see people doing all the time, putting people in boxes. Okay. Oh, so and so, she's a nurse. Oh, that's yeah, my friend's neighbor. Oh, that's the guy, the old guy who walks the dog in the afternoon. That's it. That's all you see in the person. Obviously, you are aware of other things, right? But if this is how you normally conceptualize people in terms of that, right? You classify people, you sort of stereotype people in a way. And you're missing a lot of other details which are extremely important in a person's life. You're missing their background, you're missing their personalities, you're missing their experiences, their dreams, their goals, what they do for a living, their families. There's so much that you miss when you simply categorize, classify people this way. So this is a very inadequate way of perceiving, of looking at people. Okay. And obviously, that's not going to lead to an increased acceptance of people, of others. Now, let me finish the quote. Maslow says, but if we perceive a person without abstracting, if we insist upon perceiving all his attributes simultaneously as necessary to each other, everything is important about this person, everything. That's the mindset, the right mindset. Then we no longer classify. This willingness to see all aspects of the object or the person means greater validity of perception. So you see how it relates to the previous characteristic, having a superior perception of reality. Obviously, if you are very mindful of all this detail, if you're able to look at people in the full complexity and richness of their lives, backgrounds, personalities, dreams, and so on, gosh, you're going to see a whole lot more. Don't just stick to one thing, what they do for a living. And again, why not? What's wrong with putting people in boxes? Well, what's wrong is that does not lead to an optimal way of living. Right? Remember, we need to understand the way people who are self-actualized, the way they live, their attitudes, the way they see the world. We need to, once we understand them and once we recognize those ways, then we need to work and develop the same attitudes, the same skills, the same way of perceiving people. So it's very, very important for your own good, for your own mental health, or for your patients, right? If you're a healthcare professional, you must encourage your patients to see more in someone's life. And you have to tell them, look, you need to be paying more attention to people, even ask people's questions. So you know more about them. You know, it's funny. I'm often criticized by very dear, close family members that I'm very nosy, especially when I meet somebody for the first time, because I find people fascinating. So when I meet somebody and I have the opportunity to talk to someone for the first time, and I normally do a lot of, ask a lot of questions, about their background, what they do for a living, about their families, what they did over whatever Christmas. And so my family sometimes criticize me for that. They say, hey, why you ask so many questions? You're so nosy. You have to respect people's privacy. And I'm like, gosh, I just want to know. I find people fascinating. There is so much about a person, friends. A person is a universe in itself. So there's a world of ideas, of experiences, of insecurities, dreams, expectations. There's so much that you must pay attention to. You must be mindful of if you want to be in a much better psychological existential condition. And that will give you will develop as a consequence a much, much greater appreciation for people, for individuals. You will see them in their uniqueness. You will see their humanity, and that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing to be able to do. There is another quote from the same book by Maslow that I want to share with you, and here it is. According to Maslow, when we perceive in a need-determined way, okay, I love the terminology that Maslow uses. A need-determined way of looking at things and looking at people. In the 2 videos ago, I talked about safety needs and growth needs. Remember that conflict within? And I said that many times Maslow uses the term deficiency instead of need. So just because they have a lot in common, when you perceive based on your needs, okay, then you're perceiving in a very deficient way. So, with that idea in mind, you can reread that first sentence this way. When we perceive in a deficient way, we see others as a money giver, a food supplier, a safety giver, someone to depend on, and so on. In other words, you see people strictly in the role they play in your life. You see people in terms of a function, okay? In terms of something particularly specifically they do, or a function you project on them, right? For example, oh, that's the lady who cleans up my house on Wednesdays. That's the funny friend I hang out with when I'm bored and I have nothing to do. Oh, that's the guy who hooked me up with great cheap concert tickets. That's it. That's all you see in these three individuals. Like the role they play in your life. In the sphere of relationships, sentimental relationships, it's very similar. I've heard many people saying things like that. Things like, "Oh, I love so and so because she makes me feel great." So that's it. That's why she's important. Like, what about her other attributes? I mean, what about her family circumstance? What about her dreams? That does not matter. The only thing that matters is that she makes you feel great. That's the role, right? That's her role in your life. You know the problem with this way of looking at people, friends? The problem is that people became, when you look at people in terms of their function, their role, people became replaceable, interchangeable. Because once you find somebody who does the same thing or does it even better, then let's say, for example, this person or friend who hooks you up with great concert tickets, maybe if you meet somebody who gets you an even cheaper concert tickets, okay, well, you replace, right, the first person with the second. If all you talk about or the way you conceptualize this other friend as, oh, the funny guy I hang out with when I'm bored, and even if you don't say it to yourself this way, right? But at some unconscious level, you do. People do conceptualize people in terms of their role because I hear it all the time. I hear it from people. This other friend, right? You hang out with the funny friend you hang out with when you're bored. Okay, when if you meet another friend who is funnier, then okay, you can replace the first friend. And in sentimental relationships, the same thing. If the main thing about this person, your girlfriend, let's say, the main thing about her for you is that she makes you feel great, well, you can find out there a lot of people who can make you feel even better. So if you meet another girl who makes you feel better about yourself, about your days, that's it. You can replace her. And if the first girlfriend, let's say, stops making you feel great, then she's not fulfilling her role, then you can find somebody else. You can move on to another relationship. I mean, think about how would that make you feel if people see you that way, the same way, right? If they see you in terms of a role, a function you play on someone else's life. How do you like that idea? How do you like being replaceable? Let me finish this quote because it addresses exactly what I'm talking about right now. Maslow says, we dislike being perceived as useful objects or as tools. We dislike being used. This is true across cultures, friends. You can go to any country, you can ask anybody in the world, hey, do you like being used? You know what they're going to say, right? Obviously. They're going to say no. Nobody likes being used. Nobody likes feeling that they are replaceable. Nobody likes that. People wants to be acknowledged in their uniqueness as a whole individual, right? They want to be acknowledged in their in the complexities of their life and so on. We all do. So if we want to be perceived that way, Okay, how about doing the same? How about perceiving people, perceiving others the same way? That is only helpful, friends, for you, for other people. It's just going to improve your relationships with people tremendously, your sentimental relationships. As a matter of fact, Maslow talks about love. He talks a lot about love in his book in Towards the Psychology of Being. But love can only you can only love genuinely and meaningfully if you look at the person this way, not in terms of a role they play in your life, not in terms of a category or box, but if you are able to see someone as a unique, as a wonderful, fascinating individual, a whole universe in itself, if you can see people that way, then you can love. You can truly love in an important, meaningful way. So that's what it means to have an increased acceptance of others. So two things before I conclude this video. Number one is this distinction of perceiving. Okay, there's a wrong way of perceiving, the need determined way or the deficient way, and there's a good way of perceiving. Maslow calls this way of perceiving, the good way, or the good way of thinking. He calls it B cognition or B perception. B from the word being, B-E-I-N-G. He uses this word a lot, being. And I said in the previous video, being is a synonym for existence. Okay. So you can say appropriately that there is a bad way of perceiving, a deficient way, need determined way based on what you need, and there is a good way, an existential way of perceiving. Be cognition, an existential way of processing, understanding what we perceive. And that is the good way. So that is the way we need to develop, friends. So now, to finish up, do yourself a little self-test, let's say. Okay. When you call people you care about, your friends, family, when you call them, do you call them normally, usually, because you need something from them? Is normally that the motivation behind your call when you reach out? You need a favor, or you don't want to be alone, so you need to be with somebody. So you see, I'm using the word need, right? That's a deficient way of dealing with people, the need determined way. So when you call people you care about, do you do it with this attitude, a need attitude, or do you call them because you really care about them? You want to know how they're doing. You want to know how they're doing, what's going on in their lives. That is the right way, friends. And in case you're watching and wondering, gosh, I mean, I'm I know my friends and family real well. I know what they're going on in their lives. Like I don't have to call them like every day or regularly to find out how they're doing. If that's you, well, let me tell you something. You are perceiving these people in a need determined way, in a deficient way. You know why? Because in reality, there's so much going on in a person's life. Like it's unbelievable how much goes on if you pay attention. If you're really paying attention to people's lives, to what they do, you'll see there's always something important going on. People get sick, for example, right? You can call a friend who got sick recently. You can find out, hey, friend, how are you doing? You feeling better? So people get sick. People recuperate from an illness or recuperating. You can call and inquire, hey, friend, how are you doing? How are you managing this whatever condition? People get a promotion at work, or they start in a new job, they start a new semester, they probably bought something very important recently, like a new car, or well, recently we had Christmas. You can find out, hey, how was your Christmas? What did you get? What did you do? Did you go somewhere? Did you see friends? Did you see family? Did you travel? There's so much you can do. And people, you know what? The people you hang out with, the people you care about, they're really going to appreciate it. If you're that mindful of their lives, they're really going to appreciate it. And they're going to, and that's going to improve your relationships with them, like tremendously, tremendously. So if you don't see much going on in people's lives, you're not paying attention. You're looking in a need determined way. You're not looking in an existential way, in a high resolution way. And that is, one more time, what you need to develop, or what your patient need to develop. And you need to encourage them in that direction. Tell them people are fascinating. They really are. Good. And you see, I was about to say good people, bad people, but you see, that's another very inadequate way of grouping people. Okay, is a very nice person. No, he's not a nice person. Hey, nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. So even people who you dislike, if you pay attention, I'm sure you're going to find a lot of good qualities, a lot of good things in those people that you probably don't like to hang out with, and because you don't find them interesting, or you don't find anything interesting in their lives. So keep that in mind. That's all I have to say for now. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope you join me next time for characteristic number 3. Bye bye. Thank you for watching.